When I was 22, I was a philosophy student thinking deep thoughts about unemployment at Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I was involved in a car accident. I was hit by a drunk driver one night after Jazz Fest. We were on our way back from New Orleans. I had a really bad whiplash, and for somebody who'd never had any physical issues other than like the flu or whatever growing up, it was really unsettling to be in chronic pain, which essentially just led into massage school and led into me questioning how the medical system deals with chronic pain in a country that's in the middle of an opiate epidemic. And as I continued to work on myself using stuff like massage and yoga, I just developed my own system for how I help people deal with chronic, like musculoskeletal pain, like pain that's part of their nervous system from muscles, from tissue being tight. And I just continued to work with people, and all of that free thinking I'd applied to as a philosophy student essentially became applied to body work and massage.
Wow. So did you have to rehabilitate yourself?
To a degree, yes. That process is ongoing, and you realize, especially now at 40 compared to when I was 22, you know, things kind of change as you age in various ways, you know, ebbs and flows. And even though I'm mostly rehabilitated, meaning I'm not in like chronic pain every day, at the same time, you know, barometric pressure changes and I feel stuff and probably like arthritic joints in my cervical spine, things like that. But what I find is the amount of work that I've done both with massage and yoga has not only allowed me to mostly rehabilitate myself, but it also just improves my quality of life as far as like daily pain management.
What's the most common misconception about what you do?
About massage specifically?
Sure.
I think the most common misconception is people think what I do is massage, which means I'm a licensed massage therapist and an instructor, but for people in the West, meaning in America primarily, massage means table, cream, glide, and nudity. But when I give you a reboot session, which is sort of my trademarked work, I'm having you with your clothes on. I'm using very little, if any, glide, very little, if any, cream, and I work on a mat, not a table. When you take those four things away, it's not really what a consumer thinks of as massage. It solves the fundamental challenges that they're having when it comes to chronic pain particularly, or even relaxation, but I'm packaging it in a completely different way than the average consumer is used to.
What are three things that your average pedestrian, what gets lost in translation when it comes to what you do? Me personally, I thought there was something very Zen about it, something very Tai Chi, like what are we gonna do here?
Yeah.
How much of it would you say is portrayed accurately in mainstream media?
For massage?
Sure. What are some big misconceptions that your average pedestrian have wrong?
I think that people, when they think of massage, they think of incense, candles, dark room, privacy, and my work kind of turns that upside down because a lot of my clients are coming in for chronic pain issues. So I see a lot of people who are, you know, a couple weeks away from surgery that they're hoping to prevent. And the sort of work that I do is sometimes more tailored to those individuals or people who are athletes like CrossFitters. You know, some guy who's lifting something overhead and he has a problem with his rotator cuff. I'm much more, as a therapist, I'm much more likely to like give you a fist bump and then we'll get to work like I'm a mechanic changing the oil on your car. My demeanor, even though I do have a spiritual, you know, element to my work, it's not something I overly fixate on. I'm certainly not going to give you a session and talk about chakras, for instance. Like, it just doesn't really resonate for me, and it doesn't resonate for the bulk of the clients that I see in Central Texas. You know, they're not interested in meditation. They're interested in, I have back pain. And then when I help them with their back pain and they understand what's going on, and then they not only get bodywork sessions with me, but they start taking yoga classes, then it starts to make sense and they go, oh, that's what the meditation is. And I'm like, yes. Now that you can sit comfortably because you don't have back pain, it makes more sense. But To me, it's very cart horse. Like, I just help people in chronic pain first, or I help people with athletic performance, and then we move on from there. That Asian trope, increasingly, that's one of the reasons I'm rebranding to Reboot instead of teaching Thai massage, because consumers start to bring sort of cultural baggage along with them.
What are some 3 tips that you could offer that people can start doing at home that would radically change their level of physical health and vitality?
I think most people, in my experience, even though it is in my area of expertise, I think they're chronically dehydrated. And when I say that, I don't mean soda, and I don't mean tea or coffee. They're not drinking enough water, generally, for optimal function. They're drinking enough water to stay alive. They're not drinking enough water for optimal function. I think that people should be allowed as much as possible to take naps and rest when they need to. And I think basic movement, and when I talk about movement, yoga's great. Acro yoga is great. Slacklining, other things that get you moving, be it dance. People sometimes are overly fixated on exercise, thinking that they have to bulk up or do cardio. I think people just don't move enough. They need to go out and do things that are fun, that get them moving.
What's a few examples of that? We do live in a world now, especially in Austin,
Yeah.
where everybody's at the weights, lifting really, really hard.
And that's cool. I mean, if that's your thing.
Sure.
It's just, I don't want somebody who let's say if somebody's watching this and they're chronically obese. It could be really challenging to say, okay, well, go do CrossFit. It seems like almost extreme, but the thing is, it's really just getting up and like putting on a pair of shoes and taking a walk. And if you take a walk twice a day, and then you start jogging lightly, and then you start taking dance classes or whatever, it's just physical activity and movement. I think people sometimes are too sedentary. And when I say that, what I mean is, if you work 60 hours a week at a desk, you're always just like, this posture starts to almost concretize after a while in your soft tissues. They become less pliable, and you start to get held in that position. That's what I see with clients regularly.
So you said it earlier, tell me more about Reboot.
Reboot is my trademarked system of bodywork. I kept expanding on the foundations that I had, which were primarily in Thai massage and yoga. Thai massage is a traditional art in Thailand. Yoga is a traditional art in India. And in yoga, you work on yourself. In Thai massage, somebody else works on you. And increasingly what I was doing was I was merging and blending these in a way that was both active and passive. So in addition to giving you a session, I was showing you how to work on yourself and educating you. What happened was I was getting better clinical outcomes from doing longer sessions. So I started doing 3-hour sessions on a mat, clothed, this complete syncretism of different forms of body work. Advanced abdominal massage, using a suspension system for deeper compression so I could use my knees and feet. And at that point, the work became so transformative, so much more than what people think of as massage, that I realized I needed a new name. Because clients weren't coming in for a massage anymore. They're like, I don't understand what the hell this is. And I'm like, are you okay? And they're like, no, man, I'm amazing. I just don't, they didn't have parameters for what I was doing. So I felt like, much like Uber solves the transportation problem that the cab industry was answering, but they did it in a slightly more maybe effective way, or it was faster or whatever. That's what I was doing, and I had to rebrand. I had to let my work stand out. And the reason I was so fastidious and so concerned about working completely for myself is nobody could control my work, and I could do what I needed to do. There was no one dictating you have to do a massage. It has to be an hour. It has to be on a table. I was doing the sort of work that I wanted to do that was more transformative, and that's the sweet spot, I think, both for the clients and for myself.
Walk me through somebody in your industry. How do they look at your process?
Most people in my industry don't understand my process at all. Massage therapists at this stage are starting to pick up because we're producing more content and videos, so it's starting to make more sense. But frankly, when I come in and talk about Reboot, the therapists are confused because they're like, what do you mean you don't work on a table? That alone it's like walking into an industry and pushing over their sacred cow, because they mostly in the United States, they work on a table. They don't know mat-based work at all. So they're like, what? I don't understand. What is this? Yeah.
Gotcha. Wow, that's really great. Let me see. Let me think here. So could you walk me through, I'm an average person, and I look at massage as just, somebody just, working out the kinks in underneath my shoulder or my back or something like that. What do you do? If they have 3 hours with you, walk me through that.
So if you come in, so first what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you just to find out where you're having problems. And then you tell me what. I say, hey, Knives, what are you having problems with? What's going on physically? Are you having pain somewhere? What do you say?
What if I said yes, with just overall posture? How about that?
Okay. So is it just that you're slouching forward from like working at a desk? Okay. So it's real common. And here's the thing. What we're going to do is we're going to relax muscles in the front related to like your chest and pec minor. It's real common. I see it every day. We're going to help work on that. You're probably going to feel better after the session. And then I'm going to show you some self-care stuff you can do at home to help reverse that process. Long term, when I say that what I do improves posture, I don't mean that you're clay and we mold you. What I'm doing is providing a unique stimulus, and your nervous system responds by saying, oh, I didn't realize these muscles were tight, but these muscles are always in a position where they're pulling in and shortening. But what I'm going to do is go in and provide a novel sensation, and your body's going to go, oh, yeah, no, it doesn't have to be in that position, if that makes sense.
Wow.
Yeah.
So people will ask, where did you get your education from?
I went to massage school. This is probably 15 years ago at the Baltimore School of Massage, even though I grew up in Louisiana. I went and stayed in Pennsylvania for a year and went to massage school there. When I got out of massage school, I moved back to Baton Rouge. I worked for about a year until I met my teacher, who was a woman who was living in New Orleans at the time. She now lives out on the West Coast, but she had lived about a year in Thailand. Traveling around, literally would go from city to city and ask, who's the Thai massage master here? Who's the guy, the person I got to work with? And she would travel from city to city and do that. So she sort of amalgamated all this information from traditional Thai massage in addition to all the classes she was taking in the United States on various forms of body work. When I worked with her, she just called it Thai massage. But in retrospect, I can look back and understand that she had other training that she was just assimilating. So when I would take her classes, she's teaching me. But then after I took all of her classes, I was a teaching assistant for 2 or 3 years, and we were working together one-on-one. I literally would, carry mats, get her coffee, whatever she needed, just to help her out so that she could do what she needed to do to teach. And she was my first primary teacher. I had enough at that point between massage school, online references, books, her teaching and tutelage. I would continue to take classes with other teachers, but I just continued to add to that information base, including working with clients and then just communicating very deeply with them. Because in my industry, what I find is you're always going to go back to anatomy and physiology. And then sometimes you're going to get things that you tried all your tools and it didn't quite get the client where you want them to be. And then you go back to the drawing board, you're communicating with them, trying to figure out, well, what's causing the issue? What muscle and then what nerve is innervating that's causing some sort of challenge? And you just continue to work on it. After my first teacher, it was mostly just self-study at that point. I mean, I add in, teachers when I find them, but for the most part, that was what it was.
What's an example of a distinction that you've learned in the past 3 years, kind of recently, that has changed the way that you've viewed your process? Kind of
Say it again.
An aha bingo moment of, wow, I'm going to start implementing that. You know what I mean?
I think for me, in the past year, maybe year and a half, for years, I had done 2-hour sessions. And 2 hours was what I started when I had my own home studio and I could do what I wanted to do. And as I learned more, as I learned abdominal work, as I learned the suspension system, as I continued pressing forward, I started thinking about it, and I was like, sometimes I would get lost. So I'd give you a session. I would get lost in the moment. The session might go 3 hours. And then, since I knew I could do a 3-hour session, the question in my mind was, well, is a 3-hour session better than a 2-hour? And then also, would consumers pay for a 3-hour session? I wasn't really certain about those things. So there were a handful of regular clients I work with all the time, and they've added so much to my financial bottom line over the years that I just gifted them an extra hour. I would make sure that they didn't have anything to do, so the 2-hour sessions I was charging for, I just give an extra hour. And after about 6 weeks, I just asked my regular clients, listen, you know that I've been giving you an extra hour? And they're like, yeah, I noticed that. And essentially, I just asked them, if you had a choice, don't worry about the fee. If you had a choice, would you want a 3-hour session or a 2-hour? And they all across the board said, there's something about the 3-hour, it's just better. Like, I'm more relaxed, it's more epic, it's more transformative is what they were telling me. That notion and that flip is the last thing that I remember, where you're questioning the dominant paradigm, because most massage therapists are not going to do a 3-hour session. There are some massage therapists who are frankly afraid of doing a 3-hour session because they always think table cream glide and nudity, and I'm sliding across skin, and they think you'll do damage somehow. But it's also about how they're interacting with tissue. For me to get to the point where I made the standard 3-hour session, the Reboot, that was a very pivotal shift in my consciousness and in my practice, and it also made the work stand out just irrevocably. It was like the red herring, in your industry. And when I say red herring, I'm not sure how that's used in philosophy, but it was a purple cow. That's what Seth Godin calls it. It's like he's driving through a field in France, and there's tons of cows, and the first time they saw a cow was amazing. By this time you've seen 10,000 cows, it doesn't matter. But a purple cow, ooh, that's what the Reboot became. It became the purple cow in my industry, because they're like, massage therapists would ask me, like, what are you doing in 3 hours? And I'm like, come get a session. Yeah.
So would you say that a Reboot is, you need to see it to believe it?
Well, I mean, it's like anything else. It's like, we can send you postcards of Santorini. We can send you postcards, we can take video of Santorini. It's never going to replace the experience of having gone there. That's the only thing. I take advantage of video as much as possible to be able to try to communicate and work with people. But at the same time, if you've never had a massage, for instance, I think it's really hard to understand what a massage is unless you're going and getting them regularly.
I see. So you teach your form to other people?
Yeah.
Okay. What's an interaction like between a student and yourself?
Students are often, I think, kind of quizzically or comically surprised that I'm so easygoing, that I'm approachable. I hear that all the time. They feel like, wow, we can really ask you questions. And it's one of the things in my business that I bank on. It's being able to tell a student, listen, follow me on Instagram and just video chat me if you have questions. Other educators aren't available to them that way, so they seem just overwhelmingly surprised. But for me, those students are my target market. Those are the people that I'm working with, because I very quickly realized in private practice, as my business was growing, I was only going to be able to do so many sessions hands-on. I had to teach massage therapists what I was doing to get the work to expand and to help reboot the massage industry and reboot these therapist practices. When students take class in my home studio on the second day, we have an intro tie, which is 3 days. On the second day in my home studio, I normally make everybody lunch, a couple of Indian curries and basmati rice. All the students freak out because they wouldn't think of that, right? It's like a bonus thing, but they just don't expect, I think, a level of approachability, that I'm the educator in my world where I'd sit and have a beer with them. It's no big deal.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. So I guess I want to end this talk on you know, the Reboot people in your industry are kind of skeptical about it, is what it sounds like, because they can't. It's kind of like in private doors, right? So since there's nudity involved and there's no nudity in yours, that's pretty radical.
Yeah.
Kind of walk me through the behind the scenes of what you can do that they can't do.
What massage therapists, in many instances, don't fundamentally understand. Not all, but many. I guess, I haven't weighed myself in a while. My guess is I probably weigh about 230 pounds, if not more. I can use all 230 pounds of my body weight and stand on people. That sort of compression spread across that large a surface has very different physical effects on the human body than an elbow. An elbow or a forearm is the biggest tool that most massage therapists are going to use. I have a knee, I have a shin, and I have feet. I'm using all those as well. What I do looks like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu compared to what massage therapists are doing on a table. That's fundamentally what massage therapists don't understand. And until they experience it, they don't quite get it. I had a therapist get a session with me not too long ago, and I was in my suspension system on their tibialis anterior. But instead of using my forearm or elbow in their tibialis anterior, I was using the pads of my feet, the ball pad. But both feet. I had both feet side by side, sitting in the suspension system, applying pressure over probably half of their tibialis anterior. And when I asked that therapist, is it too much pressure? Because you're always being mindful not to hurt people. Sometimes it can be too much pressure because it is a lot of weight, right? She was like, she couldn't answer. And I was like, hey, is it too much pressure? And the thing is, I realized in that moment, she's a massage therapist. She's been working for about a year at that point. She thinks she understands what the parameters are. And I just so completely shifted those parameters that she's having to check in her own nervous system to say, is this too much pressure? Because I'm using a tool that she's never had. And that is fundamentally the shift that massage therapists are going to have to make. And that also, I think, will help with more video production because they'll be able to see how I'm using my body. They'll be able to see how I'm delivering pressure with broader, larger structures. But they're still not going to have an idea of what it feels like. And that's the fundamental shift.
So where do you see Reboot in 10 years? At scale, what does it look like?
10 years, I'm not sure. People keep asking me if I'm going to open a Reboot studio and, have like a facility. And I'm not sure about that right now. Mostly what I'm trying to do is teach online and build a following so I can fill classes. I would have to be in a completely different financial league to do that. My assumption is in 10 years, if I had to think about it, my assumption is I'll be traveling the world teaching workshops.
Wow.
Yeah.